With the rise in COVID-19 cases, we obviously entered lockdown, and suddenly we were forced to do things differently. We all had to work from home, shop from home, and use tech that either we'd never used before or that we weren't regular users of. So today we're going to talk about this change in our habits and the role of tech in it. We've got a great panel today made up of some representatives from the tech and retail world. Let me begin by introducing Eugene Fisher, formerly the lead innovation consultant at River Island, now the entrepreneur in residence at Kingston Business School, who can bring a unique retailer perspective for us. Richard Evitts, who's the Chief Operations Officer at Bink, which allows customers' payment cards to be securely linked to loyalty programs. Michael Moore, Account Executive for Retail and Travel at Glassbox, which is an app which lets you see what your customers are doing in real time on your website or mobile app so that you can identify pinch points and resolve them. And then last but not least, Richard Carter, co-founder of Checkfor, who own the OrderPay app, which allows customers to order and pay via their mobile phone, plus interacting with the menu of their choice of that particular retailer using its location technology. It's all pretty brief intros, but no doubt they'll have more to say about their respective bits of tech as we go along. Finally, I'm Gary Assim, a partner at Shoosmiths. I head up our retail sector group. There's not going to be much law spoken today. We're here to talk about the sector and to talk about industry insights to try and give people some idea of what's going on. So, as I say, we don't have a lot of time, but let's start with the change in consumer behaviour. I mentioned about the change in habits. We've sort of been forced to buy or get used to buying online, and it's been interesting that there's been this marked increase in new or previously sort of like low frequency users. It seems to me, at least personally anyway, that those online platforms that are intuitive, that you can use without thinking too much, have won over those that are either a bit clunky or at least perceived as being a bit too clunky or complicated. Michael, in your business, you probably see a lot of these online processes where the customer gets to a certain point in the order process and then for some unknown reason just drops out.
Yeah.
Are you sort of seeing this perception?
Yeah. So actually, I think during the lockdown, we've seen actually some really interesting changes or shifts in behaviour. And one of the ones that was perhaps slightly unexpected was that what we're hearing from a lot of our customers and seeing from a lot of our customers is that they've got a whole new pipe, if you like, of customers, people that, and these tend to be baby boomers, I guess, and also Generation X to some extent. And these tend to be people that were normally in physical store, and now obviously are online. And that's obviously great for our brands, but it also has gives them opportunities, but it also gives them some unexpected challenges. So a great example, for example, would be my mother. So she's now devoted to Ocado, right? It seems unusual, but before that she was never out of the local Sainsbury's. But the challenge that retailers, I think, have now is that websites up until now have pretty much been designed with millennials in mind. And for this new group of shoppers, people like my mother, right, some really sort of basic online functions, things like shopping carts or how to use a credit card, right, much less intuitive for them than they would be for your millennial or your normal online shopper. So, I think that's a really unexpected shift for a lot of people, is how do we rethink processes around those sorts of areas? And I think this is a kind of permanent shift. We were talking to a very large grocery chain very recently, and they were saying that they'd done some research and that for them, there is a 13-week period where if somebody has to do something retail-wise for 13 weeks, that then becomes the new norm. That that level of repetition makes it the new norm for them shopping. So they're in no way expecting the same level of footfall in their stores that they had in 2019 in 2021.
Yeah,
I think that's an interesting shift.
yeah, that's quite a long time, actually, isn't it, for a retailer to have to wait for somebody to get into into the rhythm, if you like, into a new habit.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, it just shows their sort of level of inertia and people's, how they cling to how they normally do stuff. So yeah, you're right. I mean, 13 weeks is a significant period of time, but we've had that now, with this new normal.
And Richard Evetts, you had some thoughts on that as well.
Yeah, probably more on the face-to-face shopping experience than online. So it's a fairly obvious point, but the experience of shopping is radically different to how it was pre-lockdown. So if you'd said to any of us 6 months ago, you'll have to queue to go into a supermarket, wait for somebody to disinfect your trolley and hand it to you, get your face mask on, and all these kind of things, we would have thought you were quite crazy, to be honest. So the consequent impact of that on consumer behaviour, plenty of people used to enjoy shopping. I know I did, and frankly, it's just not an enjoyable experience in the same way. So people will still shop for necessities. But beyond that, will people really see shopping as a leisure experience? Will they still buy the kinds of things that they did, or will they just leave it, frankly, and not bother doing it? So it's, I think, pretty likely you're going to see changes in consumer behaviour, spend, propensity spend, profile, and all the rest of it that could well be pretty long-reaching, given how long we're now in a state of extended lockdown. It's not showing any signs of backing off.
Yeah, so it's interesting what you're saying there, Richard, because I read recently some comments from people saying that the art of browsing, when people are out shopping, they sort of have a vague idea of what they want to buy, but they're wandering around a shopping centre or a high street and something catches their eye in a different shop. They go in there, they browse around. Generally speaking, I think most people think that they come out and they don't, that's it. Whereas actually, if you ask a lot of the retailers say that sort of serendipitous popping into a shop actually does it does account for quite a lot of revenue in retailers. Eugene, having been as a retailer, is that right, or are those people completely off the mark?
Sorry, just took a second to go off mute. Yeah, no, that's absolutely right. And I think, like Richard was saying, we're definitely seeing shifts in browsing behavior. And kind of the way that I categorize it, it's kind of a shift in browsing intention, right? So I think that, shoppers in general, and depending on what you're shopping for, it's very different from, groceries to, bikes and fitness to apparel. Different shoppers have different kind of intentions when they're actually in a store. And so, if you're going to a grocery store, you've got a grocery list, you've got a very focused intention. You're not really necessarily going to be browsing that much. But then when you're going more towards the fashion retail side, where there's a lot of kind of explore and discovery, you still are going to be interested in browsing to a certain extent. You might know you want a black top, but which black top do you actually want? But I think what we'll see is that the browsing, instead of looking at 10 different black tops in the shop and picking them up and trying them all on, it might be a little bit more focused, where you're looking at one or two, so much more focused browsing rather than broad browsing. And I also think that the online plays a pretty big part in the browsing behaviors. And it's kind of an interesting balance between, the showrooming that used to happen with people looking for items in store and then buying them online. And that was a big concern. I think we're now seeing retailers focusing on some of the shopping and browsing experience online for a transaction that could happen in store. So for example, I recently bought a pair of glasses. And instead of trying on, 15 pairs in the store, I did the virtual try on for about 15 pairs online. So that way, when I went to the store, I was only looking at two that I was deciding between. So browsing is still exists, and I think it will continue to exist, regardless of online or offline. It's just a difference in how focused the intention is.
Yeah. It's agreed. In addition, it seems that all of us being forced into the online world, consumers are now looking for brands that are sort of supporting, good causes or the wider society, charities or research into various things or sustainability. I've read recently about an app called Stuffster. So it's stuff and then STR on the end, which is a new process for supporting sustainability in clothing. So they link up with a load of retailers. And when you buy goods from that particular retailer, you can actually sell the goods back to the retailer, it's a second-hand price. The retailer gives you an e-voucher, which you can use online for that particular retailer to buy new product. And it's on the basis that the retailer will deal with those clothes in a sustainable way, either by cleaning them and recycling them, or recycling them actually into something else and make new clothes. Have you seen that in the retail world, Eugene?
Yeah, I think that sustainability definitely has been a pretty big and growing trend within the retail space. It feels like you can't go a week without some sort of retail sustainability type event. But I think that what we've seen, at the tail end of 2019 and into 2020, and something that's been, I think, accelerated in part because of the COVID crisis, is this focus on sustainability and really the diverse the diverse set of ways that retailers can actually tackle sustainability. And so I think, at the very least, you're seeing retailers doing, sustainability edits where they'll feature, sustainable brands on their website, or set them out a little bit more differently in store. I think something that we're seeing is sustainability credits. So similar to buying carbon offset credits when you're flying, I think we'll start to see retailers that are offering sustainability credits when you're actually buying clothes. But there's a load of different models that I think are being explored. So there's the model that you were mentioning with Stuff Store, which is really interesting. Rental is a sustainability model. It's kind of been the most popular one. But some emerging ones are things like resale. So reselling an individual's clothing. There's a UK startup called Save Your Wardrobe that's doing really great work in that space. More of a marketplace approach. So, sending your products to a company and they put it on their marketplace. And a company called Cudoni, CUDONI, is based in London. They do something really great. Have a great marketplace. And then kind of a hybrid between the two is a place called Thrift Plus, where you can send them your secondhand clothes. They'll sell them on their online marketplace, but they'll also donate a portion of the proceeds to charities that you select. And so I think there's a lot of different paths that are being selected, and it'll be interesting to see what retailers, based on what's relevant for their specific category, whether it's grocery, retail, et cetera, what approaches they test out and try with for their brand and their customers.
Yeah, interesting. And so with this increase in online, we've got this sort of acceleration of tech adoption, because everything's had to happen so much quicker than it has before. And again, I was seeing that the Canadian business Shopify, which likes to call itself the online retail's operating system, has just, it's seen its business go through the roof. I mean, its share price is like 3 times what it was at the beginning. People that had no transactional website or needed it to be upgraded literally just were going to Shopify. Again, Eugene, did River Island use that, or how many people do you know that are using it?
Well, I think Shopify is a really great example, because they started off as kind of like a Squarespace for retail. So Squarespace is kind of, you can create your own website really easily, no tech experience needed. That's what Shopify did for the commerce experience, and they weren't the first, and they're not the only, but they're definitely one of the best. And it was great to see, a lot of smaller brands using the Shopify platform. And there's definitely been a groundswell of that. So a lot of brands that are scaling up quickly in the UK use them. So Gymshark is a really good example. Kitchery is more of an upscale women's fashion brand that uses them. But I think because it's kind of gone from smaller brands to scaling brands and popular brands, it's being recognized by some of the larger high street retailers as something they can leverage. In River Island, for example, they've got their own website that they run riverisland.com on, so in-house developed, et cetera. But when launching, the company launched a completely separate brand, so independent of River Island, last year. And in doing that, we didn't, do the River Island website. We decided to actually use Shopify because it was the fastest, easiest way to get the product online. And it had all the features that not only our customers wanted, but the internal staff, the merchandisers and marketers wanted. And so I think it'll be really interesting to see it scale, especially for kind of new brands. And when I talk to retailers about it, it's kind of, I encourage them to kind of think about what their their core capability is, what their strategic differentiator is. And oftentimes that's product and brand. It's not technology. And so, if you're growing, and even if you're a large retailer, I really advocate for focusing your time and energy on what your differentiating capabilities and value propositions are, instead of investing into something that is not your core competency and is also something that you can, get perfectly functional right off the shelf from Shopify. So I think they're a really great success story. And they're, again, kind of like sustainability and some of the other things we're talking about. It's been quickly amplified because of the COVID crisis, and a lot of, mom and pop, smaller high street retailers that haven't had a digital presence are using them to get the digital presence that they've needed to survive.
Yeah, thanks. So together with that acceleration of tech, also there's been innovation. I read about Nike letting its premium training app go for free in China because it was connected to its online store. And they saw this uptick in home workouts, and their sales increased by 30%. But sort of like post-lockdown, with places opening up, it also looks like to me that consumers, that their sort of radar for hygiene and safety are now more acute than ever. And any issues, whether they're perceived or real, could actually have a lasting effect on the brand. Richard Evans, I think you had some ideas on that as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, if you look at what we do, so we link together payment cards and loyalty cards, so you're automatically identified just through use of your payment card, so you can completely remove the loyalty card from the journey. The sales pitch always used to be about the fact that means 100% presentation rate. You always see the customer, you always get the data. It reduces time at till, increases throughput and all those great things. Lo and behold, now post-COVID, there's a major element in the conversation of we've removed a physical object need to be passed back and forth between the member of staff and the consumer, which is having a significant impact on the conversations that we're having, not just from the consumer's point of view, but from the retailer's point of view. They've got an obligation to keep their staff safe, so plastic screens and visors and all the rest of it. So being able to remove, a physical item having to be passed back and forth between consumer and customer, consumer and staff, obviously has a big impact from that point of view as well. I'm sure impacts Richard Carter in his business as well, even more in some ways than it was in some of our.
I'll come to Richard in a moment. Michael, I think you also had a view on this as well.
Yeah, I mean, I think that one of the really interesting shifts is actually and this has got to do with innovation, I think, is around the shift from web to app. There's been a huge growth in app. I think it was accounted for something like 34% in 2017, and I think it's projected to account for 54% of e-commerce next year, and that's before this recent lockdown. And I think a lot of that is to do with innovation around apps now making greater use of mobile devices, the camera or the contact list or whatever that is. And I think there's lots of stuff that's really interesting around that. And I think understanding that shift and why it's happening and the implications for retail is really interesting. It's a really interesting place to look at. And I mean, I think that people are adopting apps around issues. Why they're doing that is around issues of convenience, ease of use, definitely a better browsing experience, I think, and the checkout process. All those things are really much more simple in an app than they tend to be on a website, which the design has to be compromised for a whole series of reasons we could go into. But the benefits for brands through app commerce through their app is really clear, I think. I mean, it's certainly a proxy or definitely a boost for things like loyalty programs, usually offers better conversion rates. But the challenge for brands is around app adoption. So that's a really competitive space to get the real estate on somebody's phone is a really competitive space to get onto. And it's also, there's a big challenge for brands in actually extracting meaningful data from their app. Obviously, the bog standard session numbers, conversions, and all that, but actually, what's happening within that customer journey, or even granular views of which pages are working, which aren't. Those kinds of bits of data that are meaningful for them, that's going to drive revenue for them. That's also a challenge for them, I think, in getting that.
It's interesting, talking about the adoption of apps, because, now we're post-lockdown. Now we've got social distancing rules. online is still the preferable way to shop, but people need to get or want to get out and about.
Yeah.
Bars and restaurants are open now, so more people are coming out, but with the social distancing rules in place, what can we do to remove as many elements of physical interaction as possible to sort of reduce the risk of catching it? And I think Richard Carter, you've probably got the answer to that.
Well, I hope I have. I've had 30,000 people order quite a few pints on it in the last 3 weeks. I'm the founder of OrderPay, and as a brilliant intro from both Eugene and Michael there, actually we're basically the Shopify for hospitality, in terms of we enable any hospitality establishment to transact in a safe way and order and pay for foods. And actually we're an app. I went to much of the high street over the last year and said, I can build you an amazing app. And they said, no, I don't want an app, because who wants to download a load of apps? So I said, okay, let me make a super app called OrderPay. And OrderPay is a super app that reskins itself to each brand as you cross the threshold or enter it. So it becomes Nando's, becomes Pizza Express. So it addresses the point that Michael was saying there about how hard it is to get an app in the estate. We're having a super app that has such high utility that can work in Pret a Manger, Nero, Nando's, etc. And very interestingly, prior to COVID, we were launching our OrderPay application in September of this year. And I spoke to many of the high street, Five Guys, Coke, Brasserie, Stonegate, who are all part of what is a coalition, because OrderPay is a profit-sharing coalition. And they were like, great, we're going to use that for the 10 or 15% of customers who might want to engage with us in that way. And then after Easter, funnily enough, I got about 20 phone calls from a lot of boards going, hey, Rich, you know that app that we're going to launch in September? Well, I need it for July the 4th. And Stonegate with 5,200 pubs, I was listening to those guys. So yeah, we had to strip back our functionality a little bit, and we did a full go live on July the 4th to 1,500 sites, which was pretty daunting. Someone with a background in IT, you don't ever do a go live for that size, but we did, and it worked. And the principle behind it is simply that the operators want to mitigate the staff contact, the payment terminal interaction, and the physical menu interaction. So very logically, you come to ordering via mobile device, and then they go, well, that's great. Well, it needs to integrate to the till, which we do. We integrate to all the points of sale required for most of the UK hospitality. But then, if you order and pay by the mobile, how do you get it delivered to you if we don't do table service? And this was when they hadn't made their mind up. So then we're going, we can make the phone into a buzzer, so you can then tell the customer to go and pick up their scampi and chips from the bar, or go and pick it up from the pass. But beyond that, in terms of our mobile ordering payment piece, we've the click and collect. So should we say order and collect has become a much bigger thing. We're launching that with Wasabi and a bunch of other venues over the next few months. So just to I guess people who are not comfortable about staying in, but they still want to have the sales and experience. My mum and dad in their local village, there's a special fish and chips on a Friday and a curry night. They want to support the local pub, but they don't want to, previously they didn't want to be in there. They do the order and collect. And then also delivery as well. That's something that we've added on at the request of a bunch of our customers. So really just accommodating for both making the operator staff feel more comfortable, and then also the customers have options to feel more comfortable and engage with the brands. And we've seen just phenomenal uptake, obviously, as a result of the aggregation approach of this super app that works in lots of places, so you don't have to download loads of apps, and then just making it a super slick transactional experience with the latest technology that you can only leverage through native apps. We use beacons to reskin the app, Bluetooth technology, which the government's using for track and trace to enhance that experience. So that really has been very fortuitous for us in terms of the timing. Obviously horrendous time, but for the adoption of the technology, certainly very significant.
So right place, right time, really.
Hopefully we'll see. We're week 4, so let's see.
So just following on from sort of like that's sort of like the hospitality. If you then go back to the main high street shopping, clothing, retail, it's unlikely that changing rooms are going to be available anytime soon. And it's difficult then to think, well, how am I going to buy clothes online or shoes online when I don't have a chance to try them on? And do I really want to go online and buy something that I don't know whether it's going to fit? Because some people will think the returns process is too complicated, or some of the millennials just buy loads of stuff, try it all on, and then send the stuff back that doesn't fit, which again isn't great from a sustainability point of view, I suppose. I saw an app recently called Meeple, MEEPL, which is a 3D body scan app. And so they basically just use the camera on your phone to scan your whole body. And at the minute, they're only using it for tailors and made-to-measure type businesses. But I'm sure there's got to be more out there that are going to be more mainstream for us. Eugene, have you come across any of this stuff?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's been, having some sort of body scanning to get a sense for how a product will look on you has definitely been something that's been tinkered with for retailers for years. But again, it's something that's been definitely increasing, and the importance of it has been significantly, like some other things we've talked about, has been very much amplified by the new shopping norms that we have as a result of the COVID crisis. So, like you said, you can't necessarily go in store and try on a few different pairs of trousers or a few different tops. The only way for you to actually try it on is to bring it home, right? And so I think that there's when you think about things that we can do online, I think we can expedite and increase the volume of fit technologies that are deployed on websites. And there's a lot of interesting examples. I think Fit Finder is probably the kind of the industry leading one. It's leveraged by loads of global brands, including quite a few here in the UK. Recipe is another one. They're actually based in London that provides size and fit technology to a lot of retailers. But something that we're also seeing a bit of an increase in is augmented reality and virtual reality, being able to show what clothing and apparel might look like on you. And it's interesting. There's there's a quality threshold that customers expect for new technologies before they'll really tinker with it, before they'll play with it. And it's usually about 92 to 93% is the accuracy that customers will want before they'll consider it acceptable. Think of it like your home device or Alexa or Siri, right? Talking to it. There's a minimum amount it needs to understand for you to want to talk to it, right? The same thing holds true with size and fit, augmented reality, and virtual reality. And I think we're seeing technology has absolutely reached the point where we're at that comfort threshold. It's just a matter of deploying it in a way that works well for the company. And so I think we're seeing a lot of it on with shoes and accessories, so being able to see a watch on you or a shoe. What's going to be interesting is, and we're also seeing with makeup as well. So Sephora's been doing a great job with augmented reality, seeing makeup on you. It'll be interesting to see how that translates, though, to size and fit, because there's kind of this dichotomy of showing customers accurately how the product will actually fit on them, but oftentimes customers might not necessarily like the way they look with the product on them, whether it's due to the product or kind of just how they feel like they fit their clothes. And so it's going to be really interesting to see how retailers strike the balance between accuracy and kind of visual appeal, but there's loads of technologies that are doing it, and it's going to become even more important now. I'll be very curious to see how retailers will translate some functionality that people expect to see online around size and fit, how they translate that to the physical stores. Yeah. Because you similarly, you won't want people buying 5 trousers online to send to their house. You don't want them buying 5 trousers in store to bring home only to return. So I'm going to be very curious to see how some of these technologies are able to translate to the physical space.
Yeah, I've seen when the Chinese market opened and the shops opened, there was literally nobody in the stores, and they started doing live streaming, but a bit like QVC live streaming. So there's just like a couple of people there with a load of products, and it increased the sales a bit, but not much. Then they brought in some social media influencers, and that did a little more. It wasn't too bad. But then what they did is they took on a flagship store, fitted it out with webcams, and put sort of like 2 of their best store assistants actually in the store. And then on the online site, there'd be like a button to say speak to an assistant. And whereas you'd be browsing online for, a pair of trousers, you didn't quite know how long they were, or, what the inside leg was. And you could press this button and go straight to a sales assistant in the store who could pick up the trousers and say, well, look, it's a 31 inside leg or something like that. And then you'd fulfill it through the online platform. So the store was there basically to answer questions with a human in the store to give you that as close as you can get to that experience without trying it on. But I'm glad you mentioned AR, because that's one of the questions actually that's come in from the attendees, which is quite handy. And then Michael, you had another AR example as well, I think.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think one of the best augmented reality offerings I've actually seen so far is in an app that Wayfair have. It's called View in a Room, and it actually offers you a hologram in their app, and it allows you to see on your phone what a piece of furniture on their app would actually look like in your sitting room or your bedroom, or whichever room. And that obviously can be used remotely. It can also, it's been designed to actually be used in store as well to help purchasing decisions. But I think that's a really smart way of using existing tech to actually drive additional sales. I was really impressed with that.
Yeah, cool. And also we've had, again, going back to the Chinese example, where some of the sales assistants have set up social media channels on like WeChat for the VIP customers. And it's basically like, us as a group of friends on a WhatsApp, if you like, talking about, products and everything. They actually did that with their VIP customers, which, I could see brands here in the UK doing through a WhatsApp or something like that. Eugene, you've come across another app?
Yeah, so I'll tackle that in two different ways. I think that it's definitely an idea it's kind of existed for a while, but it's being translated from more upscale, high-end retail into mainstream high street retail. So having personal concierge apps and one-to-one connections with shop assistants has existed for a while with some of the luxury stores like Chanel and Louis Vuitton, et cetera. They'll actually have an app that you can only download or you can only access if you're one of the VIPs, and it'll offer some of that functionality. Yeah. But when you look at translating some of those luxury experiences that are expensive to implement into more of a high street way, once the technology becomes more feasible, we're definitely seeing quite a bit of that too. One of the companies that I think does really well with this is an app called Hero. And what they do is they allow users online to actually connect with someone who is a sales assistant who's in store. So it's very much an improvement of kind of like the chat functionality that you might see on a website. It connects a user with an actual shop assistant who's able to talk through, what the guy looks like, how it might fit, provide recommendations, things like that. But I also think that from a messaging perspective, we're seeing an opportunity for that from the employee perspective as well. So there's a back office side. And I think a really great, it kind of was originated by the fact that, all these store employee groups are using, WhatsApp. They'll have like their store WhatsApp, which posed, a couple of years ago, significant GDPR concerns, right? Because it's employee data that is not managed actually by the retailer. And so there's a company in London called Yapster, that they provide kind of a messaging tool for employees and head office to kind of communicate more efficiently. And so I definitely think that we're seeing mobile communications as a way to improve the customer experience, but then also to improve the employee experience as well.
Yeah. And I suppose the gist of all of this is trying to increase sales across the board, and whether it's millennials who are used to using it and are just carrying on buying online, or whether it's the baby boomers or Gen X getting more used to buying online. And again, I suppose Richard Carter, with cash being discouraged, sort of like contactless payment systems are, that's the key at the moment, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. Obviously ordering and paying via the phone means you obviously pay via the payment solution provider that's within it. But just as an interesting twist on that, Wasabi and Pret, our customers, and Wasabi, you'll see this in a few weeks' time, is again using the mobile. You can tap the shelf edge label with your phone, and you can immediately take the product, as in it will charge you automatically. So you go into Wasabi, you take the rainbow bento box and the the very expensive Fiji water, and it goes immediately to your phone, and you can walk straight out. So the reason we actually originally did that was for Pret, because they had back in the days when they had very large queues to worry about. People didn't want the hot drink. They said, I want I just want my wrap and my very expensive orange juice, and I just want to go. And that's how who we developed it for. But now in the post, should we say, lockdown pre-vaccine environment, people are worried about square footage constrained operating environments, and saying, how do I increase my throughput? So any of those shops with Langets, which are those help yourself shelves, are saying, well, actually, if we could just put a 20p sticker underneath there, which is an NFC sticker, and you can go with your app and tap, and then go, then that's really quite handy. So we're doing that at a few places, and actually we've been talking to some of the large industrial catering companies about having that in some staff canteens as well. So yeah, that's just, I guess, another twist that, again, of how a native application, OrderPay, can then use the functionality set which you would not be able to do via web to just then enhance that customer experience. So yeah, I'm very much looking forward to using that myself.
And does that also link into loyalty cards, Richard Evans?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, it's not a coincidence. So we're producing a solution for Wasabi as well. So they're clearly in the mood for pushing their tech forward really, really quickly. So obviously loyalty is going to be more important now than ever before, given the battle for sales to recover all the lost ground over the last 6 months. So absolutely, if we can then integrate the loyalty into that as well, so that the customer can effectively tap, go, and still then be rewarded as well, then they get everything they want without having to interact, queue up, or anything else.
Yeah, I'm talking to John.
Yeah, quite. Yeah, absolutely. So it's not a coincidence that our businesses know each other, because there's a really neat tie-up between the two. So the consumer can get everything without talking to anyone or dealing with anyone, frankly.
Yeah. And then again, on the theme of increased sales, for those people that are dealing online, whilst their sales have increased, I think behind the scenes it's probably hiding part of their online processes that maybe aren't working as slickly as they could, that they're just unaware of at the moment. And I know, Michael, that's one of the issues that Glassbox deals with.
It is. I was actually on a call beginning of this week with Gartner, and they were actually talking to us about CX, customer experience, and how a number of studies, the Walker study, but several others, had actually indicated that this was now the biggest differentiator for consumers between retailers, even overtaking price. And what Gartner went on to go and talk about was really about exactly that, and how recent trends in contact centers have been looking at what they were describing as agent assisted self-service, easy to say. And what that really boiled down to was actually customers now, when they have a broken customer journey, what they ideally want is for that contact center agent to be able to help them at the point that journey broke down, not to take them through the whole customer journey. And obviously that's, the ideal, but it's very difficult. It's very challenging to do that. You have to have every single digital customer journey recorded, indexed, available to the agent, and all of that in real time. And yeah, that is something that we are helping our customers with. But it's that's, I think, is going to be viewed in the future as the kind of gold standard of customer experience. And as customer experience seems to be becoming more and more important for retailers as a differentiator, I think that's going to be quite key.
Also, it must link to brand loyalty in some respects. I mean, I'm a sucker for new gadgets and stuff, and also for anything that's advertised on Instagram, for example. But there was one recently where I thought, oh yeah, that looks pretty cool. I think I'll buy that. I clicked on it, and I must have tried to buy the product 3 times. That's how much I wanted it, right? And I don't know, to this day, I don't know why it wouldn't go through, but it didn't go through. The only thing that worked was the help button, and I put this note in the help button saying, I really want this product, but I can't buy it through your ordering system. Can you email me? Nothing, absolutely nothing. So the point is that even if they used your system and dealt with the problem in their ordering, I don't know whether I'd still want to test it or buy it. I mean, it's lost to me now. It's dead to me.
Yeah, it's all about intervening at the right moment but also allow, one of the things that I think is really important for brands is having the information to intervene. It's having that visibility that is an issue.
Yeah. But just as a side thing, to those brands that think they're doing well, you could probably do better if people like me could actually get through and buy the stuff. So we've dealt with one of the questions on AR. Another question's come in saying, is this the end of bricks and mortar? Well, not really, no. I mean, it's still going to be around. It's just, I think it's going to be just in a different guise to what it is now. Personally, I think they're going to be much more experiential. You're going to go there for an experience. It's going to give you a buzz. You probably aren't going to buy the product when you go into the store, but it's going to give you that feeling that when you get back or as you're traveling, you'll look it up and maybe then buy it. Or potentially, if you're going to offer goods in the store that aren't available online, that could also be another possible attraction to the stores. So I think there'll be a lot of repurposing of the stores as opposed to just the high street just being full of empty buildings. I don't know, Eugene, have you got any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I was going to try and interject quickly. Yeah, I think that it's the death of the high street is it's something that we've seen in press for a couple of years now, and I think that's increasingly we're seeing the statistics just show that is absolutely not the case. And while there is definitely, big, front page news around retailers, large retailers that are closing a lot of stores and that are laying off a lot of staff. That is absolutely happening. But the volume of transactions that are taking place in store compared to online, or the volume of transactions that are taking place in store, it's not, some precipitous decline. It's actually kind of, it's hit a bit of kind of a plateau from the decline it was having when online was taking off. And it will continue to subtly decrease. But most of the big four consultancies, that even they're advocating that, in the next, 5 years or so, we're still going to see physical retail accounting for, 70 to 80% of retail transactions. And of course, that's going to vary between retail sector to sector. So, you've got grocery, you've got apparel, you've got kind of holiday sales or fitness equipment, so many different verticals. It'll definitely vary, but the stores absolutely aren't going to go away. And I think an interesting counterbalance that we really aren't seeing is the rise of the pop-up and a lot of these pure play brands, so previously digital brands, that are now expanding their physical footprint into their footprint into the physical space. I was walking through Covent Garden last weekend, and there is a few previously digital brands that were already open. So Allbirds, a shoe company, they've got their space. Gymshark had a space that wasn't quite moved in yet, so it looked like they might have had a bit of a pause because of the crisis. But I think, the death of the high street, it's fun to say and it sells press. It gets clicks. It's not happening. If anything, I'd say the high street is changing, not dying.
Yeah. Any other views on that?
Probably worth saying it's not so much the demise of the high street, but certainly those retailers who adapt more quickly to the change in circumstances, consumer behaviour and everything else we talk about are going to do a whole lot better than those who don't. It's a fairly obvious thing to say, but that can only accelerate the trend, I would have thought.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Well, we've got 1 minute till we finished, and that's probably perfect timing to say thanks to everyone that's been watching. Thanks to all the panelists as well. I know that you're all very busy, especially with all the tech that you're running at the moment. So thanks very much for spending some time with us and just letting everyone know on your particular bits of tech, and also just generally for retail, what's going on. And thanks very much to everyone.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Goodbye.
Bye.
Bye.